today's talk is based on Star Trek because I grew up a Trekkie. But before I tell you about that, a joke. Spanish teacher gives out homework to her her seventh grade class, saying, write a paragraph in Spanish, return it tomorrow. So she gets the paragraphs back, she grades them, she gives them back out, and she goes up to this one kid and she goes, "Are you sure you didn't use the Google Translator or some other translator?" Kid goes, "No, definitely not." Teacher says, "Then why is it in French?" Okay. But Star Trek. The Prime Directive in Star Trek, for anybody who knows, was you don't interfere with another planet's growth or anything about that planet until they become a part of the whole. And it made me think about Prime Directive and the idea that each of us has one. Now, a lot of folks say that that there is that the basic prime directive of everything is love. And that's true. But when we're looking at our daily lives, or at least when I have spent decades and decades looking at my daily life, wanting to understand the meaning of not just life, but my life, I found that that thinking about how everything is based on love wasn't enough. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized that there was something directing my life in me, not something out there, but in me, in my basic DNA. And the way I discovered this was in retrospect. I looked back over 50 years of life and realized that I was only doing a few different things. Now, for those of you who have been around here a while, you've heard me talk about the fact that I've had over 90 different jobs. But what I notice is the similarity, what I am drawn to, what I constantly wind up doing anyway. And it came down for me to only two things: being supportive of others or creating stuff. And what I noticed is sometimes those choices that led to those things were conscious. I made conscious choices about that, but that at other times they were unconscious and led me to the same place anyway. I'll give you an example. For decades, from my 20s till almost 40, from my teens to almost 40, I did everything I could to become successful in the music business, particularly rock and roll, which was my style of music. I had a band, my first band, I was 17. That band, we broke, we got to audition for some major labels. We played some gigantic gigs. We did some great stuff, and I blew it up. I did. Nothing else did. I did. Fell in love with some woman, went off to Hawaii to live with her. And by the time I came back, everybody in the band was so pissed at me, the whole thing blew up. I put together a second band. And this band got signed to Warner Brother Records and to Paul Simon's management company. And just before we were supposed to go and record, Paul Simon blew it up. And the band fell apart. I put together a third band. Now, this band, Well, let me backtrack just a bit. After the second band, I went into a funk that led to me being basically drunk for 6 months straight, every day. That's all I did. I was so depressed. My two best friends were a married couple. One played bass and one played guitar. And they decided an intervention was necessary. And they came over and said, you are going to stop drinking and we are going to create a band together. And we did. And that band got so popular that the Talking Heads management company came to me and said, we're going to sign you, but you have to get rid of your bass and guitar player. We already have a record label ready to sign. We have got a record contract for you. We have a tour set up for you, but only if you get rid of your bass player and guitar player. It was quite a moment of culmination after 20 years of trying to be successful at something, coming so close so often. And here it was being offered to me, saying, here it is. Here's what you want. All you got to do is stab your two best friends in the back. I didn't do it. I said no, obviously. For a long time, I was depressed as hell about that because the band never reached that pinnacle again. After that, we wandered a while and the band fell apart. And I wound up, in fact, something that came out of that was we wound up being blacklisted from every club in New York City, which was the true end of my career trying to make it in rock and roll, was the day I found out that all my gigs in New York had been canceled and I was now blacklisted and couldn't get a gig in the city. It wasn't until I discovered what my true nature was that it turned out that that was not the worst moment of my life, but one of the greatest. If it wasn't for that moment, the odds that I would have ever come up with the idea 10 years later to start a suicide crisis hotline in which we took over 10,000 calls in 3 years and saved 100% of the people who called. That I became the music director of a center where I started creating music that was clearly inspiring people all over the country. In fact, I have gotten emails from all over the world from people who have been inspired. I would have never done any of that if I had been successful in rock and roll. Not only that, my drug habit in my success was pretty big. And I always pushing the envelope. The odds that I would have lived through rock and roll is pretty slight. Instead, I got to live a life of service. Service through music, service through my beingness, now service here with all of you. This wouldn't have been possible, and yet was not something, there were conscious choices in that have led me here, but there were also many unconscious choices that led me here. And the thing that I have discovered through all of this is that those of you who are afraid of being on automatic, though that is not the place to fear. Because if you go on automatic, your higher consciousness takes over, your prime directive takes over, and it leads you down the same road you wanted to go anyway. The people who really, and all of us, where we really get off base is when we make conscious choices that are actually in, conflict with who we truly are. And we do that, right? We do that when we have the thought, this is what we should do. There's somebody else, we've been convinced by society, by our parents, by our peers, that there's something we should be doing that or shouldn't be doing that's wrong. And then we make conscious choices that actually pull us away from who we truly are. But there is something in us that even when that happens, for many of us, wants to bring us back. That pull, that inner sense that just this life is just not right yet, pulls us until all of a sudden we go, oh my God, this is incredible. My life is awe-inspiring. I want you to know that that's possible for you. It is absolutely possible for you to have a life where you wake up every day feeling, oh my God, this is even better than I ever imagined. And I say to you that if you don't feel that way, take the time to discover your own prime directive so that you can make choices to bring you fuller to that. And the best way to discover that is to look back. Look at what you did. Now, when I say look at what you did, I'm not talking about the job you had. I'm talking about what you did in the job, what you do with your friends, what you do with your family. Are you the person who everybody comes to for advice? Are you the person who, after somebody talks to, they say, it's always so healing to talk to you? Sometimes I notice that people get lost in trying to discover who they were meant to be and particularly what they were meant to do here. And don't realize that they've been doing it all along anyway. They're simply trying to find a way to label it here. And I discourage you from doing that. This is not about the labeling. It's about what you bring to whatever it is you're doing. Your prime directive is at work no matter what you're doing, whether you're cutting hair, whether you're acting, whether you're in ministry, whether you're in accounting. That is not the part that tells you what your purpose in life is. It's what you bring to it. I notice that I'm the go-to person when somebody wants advice in my family and for my friends, and obviously as your minister. But even before I was a minister, that's the job I played. And what I brought to the over 90 jobs that I have done. I notice that whatever I'm doing, I'm always thinking outside the box, always creating in ways of bringing something to it that's out of the ordinary. Maybe you've noticed some of that in our ministry, like our films. Look at your life that way. Don't say, I'm not doing what I came here and meant to do because I don't have, if you have a healing temperament, because I'm not a physician, because I'm not officially with the sign that says healer. That's not what matters. What matters is what you bring to that, the healing presence you bring to however it then shows up. What looks like meandering for some never is, because our prime directive is always bringing us back in anything we are doing to that main purpose we are here to do. And we bring it to everything we do. I look around at my life and I am in a place where I am in awe of not only what's happening, but the possibilities that still surround my life. That's possible because I allow my prime directive to lead consciously and unconsciously. That was a big deal for me to realize that even when I was just unconsciously what looked to me like meandering, when I looked at it closer, I realized it wasn't. We're all taking paths that kind of just go around and here and then there. Nobody's doing a straight line. And those who are on a straight line, that's maybe it's from choice, but if it's from shoulds, I know a lot of people who have had dramatic midlife crises because they spent the first half of their lives being led by shoulds and didn't tap into that which really has meaning for them. I believe that it's true that the prime directive of life is love. But just like we're all one and everything is the same thing, we're still, we're all snowflakes. We're all individual and unique in our expression of this one. We all have a unique expression in the prime directive that drives your life. You can trust it. If you are fretting about any decision at all, you don't have to. There is something deeper in you that is carrying you forward so that you bring forth in everything and anything you do that which you were meant to bring forth. It is the essence of your personality. It is the essence of your beingness. Every one of you is bringing forth that which is best in you. The only choices you can make that can get in the way of that are conscious choices based on somebody else's idea of what life should be like that somehow you have taken on. Whether it be from the collective consciousness, your peers, or your parents. Make sure you move those out of the way. I've been journaling. I'm very lucky in this way. I've been journaling since I'm 18 years old. I still have every journal from the 18 until now, which I still journal. And there are times I sit down and I read one of them. What was I doing back then? What was I thinking? What was I writing about? And I noticed the threads of it all. That with all my what may look to me and others like meandering, has been pretty much in line with exactly how I was thinking about what I wanted to bring forth in life all these years. And I am betting it's the same for you. Sure, maybe we were more idealistic at 18. Maybe how we thought about maybe we've taken on some realistic thinking, but that kind of realistic thinking can really get in our way. You have been bringing forth that which is beautiful about you all along. You don't need to fret whether you have the label or not. You don't need to fret whether what you are bringing forth, it makes money. Trust yourself to know that your prime directive has been guiding you since the day you were born. I and my wife treat every day for simply a full flourishing life. We have chosen to get completely out of the way of our prime directives and let them come forth even stronger in our lives. I highly recommend you do the same. We have lives that are beyond what we could have ever imagined. You can too. It doesn't matter how young you are. It doesn't matter how old you are. You have the power of the universe within you. Bringing forth that seed, that knowing, that uniqueness that can only be you. And it's been guiding you from the day you were born. And it will guide you to the day you transition onto whatever comes next. Trust in it, love it, take the time to explore it. It's there, I promise. And I love you. Thank you. God is the source of all supply. Money is God in action. What I give, I receive multiplied abundantly. All that God is, I am, and so it is.